Welcome back to the Global Ledger. I'm Justin. When people hear the term petrodollar, it's usually framed as a political deal, a historical agreement, or a relic, say, of the past. But that framing, I think, misses the point. The petrodollar system wasn't primarily political. It was infrastructural. And today's episode is about how energy, specifically oil, became deeply embedded in the global monetary system and why that connection still matters, even as the world changes. By the end of the episode, you'll understand how energy pricing became monetary plumbing and why the system evolved, not by design, but by necessity. Let's get into it. I always like to start with clearing some myths first. And you got to ask your question, well, what the petrodollar isn't. The petrodollar is not a secret treaty or a single agreement frozen in time, or even a guarantee of dominance. There was no moment where the world voted to use dollars for oil forever. What happened instead was really far more practical. And you can think of it as this. Energy really is the foundation of global trade. Energy sits beneath everything: manufacturing, transportation, agriculture, industry, modern life, right? So because energy is universal, it must be priced consistently, settled in a reliable way, and financed at scale. That creates a problem. Global energy trade needs a common monetary language, and historically, very few currencies could support that, such as like large transaction sizes, a global settlement, deep financing markets, and reliability under stress. We've noticed some points we are bringing into this from the last episode. Okay. So here's why the dollar filled the role. The dollar didn't become central to energy trade because it was, quote, chosen. It became central because it worked. Energy exporters needed a stable unit of account, liquid assets to store proceeds, and market debt, enough to absorb massive flows. Energy importers needed financing, hedging, and predictable settlement. Dollar-based markets provided, and still do, provide all of that at scale. Over time, oil pricing in dollars became less a policy choice and more an operational default, if you will. So petrodollars can be seen as a recycling mechanism, okay? This is a key insight that I think a lot of discussions underappreciate. The petrodollar system wasn't just about pricing oil. It was about recycling surplus dollars back into the global system. Energy exporters accumulated large dollar balances. Those dollar balances needed safe assets, liquid markets, and they needed yield. Okay, so let me repeat that. Energy exporters accumulated large dollar balances. Those balances needed safe assets, liquid markets, and yield. They flowed back into government bonds, financial markets, global credit. This recycling helped finance deficits, deepen markets, and expand global liquidity. Energy wasn't just fueling the world; it was helping fund it. So, why does this, though, create a global dollar demand? Once energy was priced in dollars, something structural happened. Every country that imported energy needed access to dollars. They needed dollar funding markets and dollar liquidity buffers. That demand existed regardless of domestic currency, political alignment, or trade balance. Energy imports created persistent global dollar demand. This is why dollar shortages often emerge during crises, even when energy markets appear calm. So, why was it that this system was stable? For a long time, the system worked smoothly. Energy flowed, dollars recycled, markets deepened, and liquidity started or continued to expand. But stability depended on functioning financial markets, open capital flows, and confidence in settlement. But when stress appears, that recycling starts to slow down, funding starts to tighten, and dollar demand spikes. That's when the system really revealed its fragility. And it's not because it failed, but because it was doing exactly what it was kind of built to do. And here's why. The petrodollar has never really ended. You'll often hear claims that the petrodollar is dead, the energy is being de-dollarized, or the system is collapsing. What they usually mean is, what is meant is this. Marginal diversification is a big one. Bilateral trade experiments, okay, or geopolitical signaling. I think those are three things that are usually meant by this when people say the petrodollar is dead or things of that nature. But the core infrastructure remains, okay? So energy markets are still globally financed, heavily hedged, and deeply integrated into dollar funding systems. Changing invoicing at the margin does not replace deep collateral markets, global settlement infrastructure, or liquidity under stress. Infrastructure changes slowly. So this is important. Connecting this up to ARC 7 with what we covered in the last episode 61, about reserve currencies. Reserve currencies persist because they solve real problems under real stress and at very real scales. Energy trade amplified global dollar demand, not because of power per se or political moves, but because of practicality. I think that's important. Really, really important. So the petrodollar system was never just about oil. It was about settlement, liquidity, recycling, and scale. Energy became monetary infrastructure because the world needed a system that could handle global trade reliably. And that need hasn't disappeared. And until it does, I think the connection between energy and money will remain one of the most important and misunderstood features of the global system. I want to thank you for listening to episode 62 of the Global Ledger. We talked about petrodollars and why they're important, and also about why it never really ended. In the next episode, we're going to try to take this a little further, and not on the petrodollar side, but we're going to touch on global trade and specifically global trade finance, and talk about the shadow system beneath it. So once again, I'm Justin, and thanks for being here.